Chelsea Bieker, welcome to the Word Weaver podcast.
I'm so thrilled to be here today.
I feel like I've known you forever, but we've never actually met.
I feel that way too.
Took this artsy photo with Godshot. It has the best cover. On my balcony in the midst of the pandemic.
Incredible. And even seeing you hold the stack together is really emotional.
We have to talk immediately about Madwoman. It is a masterpiece.
I cried a lot in the writing of it. I would just be crying and writing. And actually, that was always a positive indication to me that I was getting at something very true. This is a book that's not going to look away from the truth.
You probably heard this repeated back to you so many times, but that opening line, the world is not made for mothers, yet mothers made the world.
I always believe like a perfect first line holds that full DNA code for the rest of the books.
Chef's kiss.
How do you make memory feel dangerous on the page? No, this is provocative. This is the truth.
Ooh, mic drop.
Wow, that was actually kind of intense. That's how I move through the world. You're just thinking of avocados and I'm thinking about how to survive this parking lot. I don't think I've shared this before, but I'll tell you.
Perfect
so
little
good.
teaser. We get an exclusive.
No. Also, no. Like, I also wanted to just say the thing like it was.
This article you wrote in People about short kings and hot rodent men, how they're having a moment.
Mind is blown. Where has this been all my life?
This is one of my favorite conversations to date. I adore you.
I adore you.
Welcome to the Word Weaver podcast, a literary place in cyberspace where I share tangible tips, tricks, and words of wisdom to help you achieve your dream of writing a book. I'm your host, Louise Johnson, a writer and the author of Behind the Red Door. Let's dive into today's chapter. Welcome back to the Word Weaver podcast. I'm your host, Louise Claire Johnson. And today I'm so happy to have Chelsea Bieker on the podcast. Chelsea is the author of 3 books, Godshot, Heartbroke, and most recently the nationally best-selling Madwoman, which was also a Book of the Month club pick and the New York Times called brilliant in its depiction of the long shadows cast by domestic violence. Her first novel, Godshot, was longlisted for the Center of Fiction's First Novel Prize and named a Barnes & Noble Pick of the Month. Her story collection, Heartbroke, won the California Book Award and was a New York Times Best California Book of 2022. Her writing has appeared in the Paris Review, Marie Claire UK, People, The Cut, Wall Street Journal, and No Tokens. Chelsea was raised in Hawaii and California and now lives in Portland, Oregon with her husband and 2 children. You can also subscribe to her Substack newsletter, Make Up Your Life. Chelsea Bieker, welcome to the Word Weaver podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here today.
I'm so excited to chat with you. I feel like I've known you forever, but we've never actually met.
I feel that way too.
I know. Do you get that a lot where people think, oh, I know you, maybe because your books are so personal?
Probably. I mean, it's funny the intimacy that can be created online. Like, I truly do feel like I really know people that I've never met in real life, and then meeting them in real life is like the next tier of that. And
Yes.
you have to like reorganize your brain because often people like have a different energy in real life than they do online, or it's kind of interesting, but I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is really true. I actually have your stack of books here. They're on my shelf next to Joan Didion. It's the Chelsea Bieker area. And I remember
Thank you.
in 2020, I took this artsy photo with Godshot. It has the best cover with glitter all over it on my balcony in the midst of the pandemic. And then 2 years later, I did the same thing. I had the candy necklace with Heartbroke. You launched both your first books in the pandemic, craziness. And now your third book, Madwoman, you finally get to go on a book tour, which you're in the middle of right now. How has the experience of launching Madwoman differed from all the virtual events? Has it been nice connecting with readers IRL?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because you're right that the first 2 books really came out in pandemic times. Heartbroke was sort of when we were kind of coming out of a lot of the regulations around
Right.
masking and events, but still it was like really still in that zone where people were not, especially in Oregon, like people were really not coming to a lot of events or still doing them. So I
Mhm.
felt like it was still touched by the pandemic in 2022. And this book feels in some weird way because of that, I think like a debut almost, because I'm getting that more traditional experience with this book where, yes, I got to do my launch night in person and I got to go on a tour and
Yeah.
connect with readers in that way. So I've just been so looking forward to that. And I think any pandemic author probably has a much different perspective on that now than we would have before because you know what you missed out on and it's so you're like ever more grateful for getting to do all of that. I will never take an in-person gathering for granted again after what we all went through in 2020 and on. So I'm just really grateful and also pretty amazed by the reading community and literary community that I was able to find online in 2020 and how people still supported books then and that was really heartening to see like people just sort of like because Godshot came out in March of 2020. So like really right as the pandemic set in
Oh,
and people just snapped to attention and got really creative and still promoted books and that book still found an audience. So I don't know. It's funny how books can just kind of survive
yeah.
the conditions, whatever they are.
Your books are word of mouth, like evergreen. They're gonna find their audience because they're so well written. But that's a good point of how you found your audience still, and they stuck with you in the middle of the pandemic, and now you get to be and see them. And so that's pretty heartening.
Incredible. And even seeing you hold the stack together is really emotional. And there were a few times people would have come to the signing line for Madwoman and they'd have all the books together and I got to sign them all. And I really realized like with Godshot, I never signed that book. I never read from that book really, unless it was like in my room,
Yeah.
on a computer. And there's like some grief there. I think right before the Madwoman tour, I was kind of like, oh, I think I'm realizing like what I missed out on with that. And that is a
Mhm.
loss. And it's a small loss in the grand scheme of everything that was lost during that time. But
Yeah.
I think we're all still kind of processing those smaller losses and the
Yes.
reconfigurations we all made during that time.
Yeah. But it's nice you're seeing the silver lining of you still fostered that online community, which in a way you could reach a broader audience. And then
Mhm.
now, like you said, you're never going to take for granted an in-person event. And I was really sad to miss your Toronto event with Ashley Audrain. That is
I
so
know, I was
cool.
so sad.
I'm so happy. When you came to Canada though, it was on
Yeah.
my birthday actually, so I couldn't make it.
Oh,
September 12th, great day.
it is a great day. Well, yeah, but it's so great to connect right now. And I love Toronto. Toronto is full of like brilliant authors, brilliant readers. What a cool literary city. So
It
I was so
is.
excited to go there.
Was this your first time in Toronto?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, great. Yeah, Toronto has a really nice small literary scene where everyone just is very
Hmm.
supportive of each other, so it's amazing. We have to talk immediately about Madwoman. It is a masterpiece. 12 out of 10 stars. I ripped through it. Holy crap, this is so, so amazing. And you've probably heard this repeated back to you so many times, but that opening line of the world is not made for mothers, yet mothers made the world. Ooh, mic drop. Literally, that gives me chills. That to me also encapsulates the entire theme of the entire book, I would say, in one powerful sentence. So, first, I have to ask you about that chef's kiss of an opener. How did it come to you? When did it come to you? Was it at the end of the writing, or did it kind of come from the ether at the very beginning of this is how I'm going to start Madwoman?
I think the line came pretty early on, but
Mhm.
it wasn't the first line always. There was a
Oh,
different first line, and through revision, I ended up, putting that first. I feel like as a writer, I tend to have the process of writing a lot and then like condensing down and mining what I've written for like those gems. And that line stood out to me so much. And it's funny because people have really responded to those lines, those opening lines. And I was worried if I started the book with a line about motherhood like that,
Right.
That it would be alienating for some readers, or someone might look at it and be like, oh, just a book about mothers. Because, you know, I don't believe that our society really likes moms and their kids very much. I think in our patriarchal world, it's like there's not a lot of support, there's not a lot of understanding, there's not a lot of spaces for mothers. And so I was like, must there be a sexier line to open the book? And
Right.
in the end, I really resisted my own impulse toward finding something else, because I was like, no, this is provocative. This is the truth.
Yeah.
And this holds all the DNA of the book in it. And
Yes.
I always believe like a perfect first line holds that full DNA code for the rest of the book. So that's how I think about first lines. I'm like, I need something that's going to like right away not only grab the reader, but also feel like a thesis statement in some way, right?
Yeah.
Going back to like college paper
Yeah,
writing.
exactly.
I don't know. I think lines like that are sort of the reward that we get if we keep showing up to the page. I don't know where they came from exactly. I remember with Godshot, like the final line was always with me. I always knew that was the last line.
Yeah.
And I think these sort of like really poignant lines can serve as guideposts for the rest of the writing of the book, where if you ever feel like you're off track, I always go back to the beginning. I'm like, all right, well, where did I begin? Because
Yeah.
that's gonna hold the rest in it. And I was really happy in the end starting there. I think the original first line, I think she said something like, I was in a manifestation phase, a desperation phase. And also that is true. Like the book explores those things too, but in the end, the other ones were the right way.
It is exactly what you said. Like you have to write it all out and then you can mine for those gems and you just know, okay, this is it. I think I would feel the same way of, oh, I don't want somebody to pick this up and just think, oh, it's a book about motherhood. It is and it isn't. It's about the complexities and depths of women, and motherhood is just one identity. The big theme in this book is also we're talking now in October, which is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And the New York Times praised Madwoman and said it's a brilliant depiction of the long shadows cast by domestic violence. Truly, it is a gut punching look at domestic violence and its aftermath, which I think is really important to note. This is a work of fiction, but this is still semi-autobiographical, pulled from experiences of your own life. So I'm curious to ask you, when did you realize, okay, I'm ready to talk about this story, the cycle of domestic violence, but also the generational trauma of domestic violence, how it trickles down to affects the children as well as the mother?
Yeah, I thought about that so much as a mother in the early phases of motherhood, where
Hmm.
I felt like I had a real handle on my childhood trauma. I was like, I've been to therapy, I've processed my stuff, and now I am going to become a mom and everything is going to be great because I
Hmm.
know everything about myself. I thought I'm 26 at this time.
Yeah.
It's true that I had done a lot of work on myself, probably maybe more than a lot of people by that time in my 20s, just because I got sober really young. I
Yes.
I entered into like that self improvement world at 20 years old, where maybe it takes other people longer or whatever to
Right.
kind of even care about some of that stuff. But I like hit the ground running in adulthood with really wanting to just interrupt generational stuff. And it's like a life's work, right? It's not going to be done, and motherhood is not going to like fix it. And
Hmm.
maybe I thought that I was really stepping into this new phase, but what I was kind of confronted with was that I was naturally going to reprocess some of those childhood memories through the eyes of my own children as they got older, as I think too, it's like so much of the book was written from a phase of I had post weaning. So when I stopped breastfeeding, I
Yeah.
had a lot of anxiety, like more, it wasn't normal. It was like what I would kind of compare to like postpartum depression anxiety that you might experience after you have a baby. So, but mine was like after I stopped breastfeeding 2 years later.
Yeah.
And I never knew that could happen. No one had ever talked about it to me.
No,
There's
they
very
don't.
little information. even now there's like not enough information. And at the time, there certainly was like literally, I was relying a lot on like British moms message boards. And even then, there's no solution. It's just sort of like a community around it, which
Visibility.
is nice, but no one's like, here's what you do. So, all that to say, the book started in that place of sort of like, I think when you're motherhood really strips you down. You're so tired. You're if
Oh
you're
my
dealing
God.
with any sort of like postpartum stuff, like it really there's a rawness to that time that it's hard to escape what's going on. It's hard to escape your feelings, or I was very confronted by memory during that time. And
Mhm.
I think I wanted the book to really represent what does it feel like to be sitting in your own house, totally safe, logistically, like and practically
Yeah.
safe, but you are feeling like the urgency and the terror of memory. Like, how do you make memory feel dangerous on the page? And that was the challenge of this book for me because that is how I've experienced it. And, you know, we can talk about like complex PTSD and all of those things, but I was like, I want to do a good job really showing, yeah, what it feels like to just be holding your baby in the nursery, but really feeling transported to a much more dangerous place in the past. And I personally, what's true about the book for me is just that I had to really kind of reprocess some of the stories that I told myself about my own past. And those stories were like survival stories. It's how you get through. But at a point, I think sometimes they come back to greet us again to be relooked at because maybe they're not all the way accurate or maybe there's more there.
Yeah.
And one of those stories for me was definitely the story I told myself about the violence that I'd witnessed as a child, and namely my father's violence toward my mother and how that had affected me. That was like what I was going through on that personal level as I wrote the book was kind of teasing out like the stories that we'd told to get through and then the real story. And those
Yeah.
were two different things. And I was no longer willing to kind of bypass the truth of my father's violence and my mother's other partner's violence, like all the violence I'd witnessed, which was a ton. I was just kind of like, no, I'm actually in a place in my life where I really want to call it like it is and explore that in a really direct way.
Well, you did it beautifully and very powerfully. And I don't think there's enough books like that where you talk about that experience of holding your own child after dealing with it as a child yourself. Like you're mothering yourself when you're a kid and then you become a mother. And I just went through it myself recently of where I think you're so cracked open and everyone talks about, oh, you get to re-experience the childlike wonder through the eyes of your children, but it also transports you back to the past of unpacking all that stuff that you thought, like you said, you dealt with and you had put away. So I think it added a lot of depth and complexity with Clove that we get to see her as an adult and also as a child witnessing her mother's abuse. I wanted to ask you that it's kind of this moment where it forces you, like you said, to reckon with what it means to be a mother, but then also the choices that your own mother and Clove's mother had to make back then. So, was there a light bulb moment for you kind of in writing? And I know you wrote somewhere in an article that in processing your own mother's passing, you said she did not die of alcoholism, she died of domestic violence. How did you come to that realization? If you peel back the layer, we're blaming the woman when really it's the domestic violence at the root of it. So, how did you come to that reckoning?
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's like something I think I probably knew on some level always, but then I didn't know it on that like deeply felt level
Mhm.
until, yeah, around the time my mom died, because I was really, and I was already kind of reckoning with, you know, motherhood in the best of circumstances is challenging, right? Like it just is. And I think that as I was mothering my two little kids, I was really forced to imagine the conditions under which my mother was trying to mother me. And I was like,
Mhm.
holy shit, like she feared for her life on this daily basis. And so
Yeah,
you actually can't really be creative or mother or like under those conditions. She was under this oppressive force all the time that I think no one really wanted to look at. The focus was always so much on her addiction. Like the
right.
addiction, her addiction is her problem.
Yeah.
And I think that that was another one of those truths that I wanted to turn back over and look at again because, yes, her addiction was a real factor in her life and it was something she battled since being a teenager, but it's also a really direct byproduct of the trauma she was experiencing at the hands of men. And so I just wanted to reorder the way we were talking about that. And when I gave my mother's eulogy, I was writing it and I think like I wanted the eulogy to be both honoring and also true.
Mhm.
And so there was a part where I acknowledged her the struggle she had with addiction in the eulogy and then I slept on it and I was like, something's not right here.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when the light bulb went off. I was like, because for so long that's the focus, but it's the wrong focus.
Mhm.
Actually, we need to call attention to the thing that she battled every single day in her own home, which was male violence. And
Mhm.
I'm no longer willing to just sort of like throw that in with the addiction as if it's like I do think they're entwined, but like also no, like I also wanted to just say the thing like it was, and in doing that I think the book became truer too because it really helped me find that like really guiding force of the book where it was like this is a book that's not going to look away from the
Mhm.
truth and it's going to really skewer that directly because I'm so tired of when we excuse men or we excuse abuse or we tell stories about it that offer this weird leeway to the abuser and
Yes.
right place the burden of action on the victim and I'm just really tired of that. So it's like I want a book that's going to not romanticize and not the book actually doesn't focus all that much on the acts of violence that they experience. I think violence on the page is a little bit boring. Like it's very predictable. It's just always going to
Yeah.
have like similar outcomes. But like you said, it's like the reverberations afterward are what I'm more interested in. How does this impact people for generations to come, which we know that it does.
Yes.
And I wanted a book that wasn't going to shy away from the way the energy of violence continues to kind of infect and definitely comes between like female intimacy, right? It's like
Mhm.
the book is a direct address to her mother because she has felt like her entire childhood was focused on evading her father's violence instead of connecting deeply with her mother. Like they're
Right.
together, but they're like more like partners in sort of
Survival.
survival. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you can't. Where is that normal intimacy when you're just surviving every day? Well, you can't really have it. It's part of that violence that it strips away. So
Yeah.
this is like almost Clove's moment to be like, Mom, I'm going to talk to you, and I'm not going to be interrupted this time. I also think like this is the truth that I had to arrive at as a person
Mhm.
before I could write it into the book. And those two
Yeah.
things were really happening on the same trajectory. So,
It's amazing because, like I said, I just had a baby, but I didn't have this cloak of domestic violence to deal with on top of it. And it's already hard enough as is. But it did make me empathize with my own mother and my grandmother on a whole other level. Still feel like we have a long ways to go to not placing the blame on women, but I want to talk about, you did touch on it briefly, this post-weaning mood disorder. You wrote in Marie Claire also very honestly about how kind of your turbulent childhood and then later post-weaning, you really had this pursuit of wellness. And Clove, that's a big part of the book, is she is pursuing wellness. She has this perfect curated life, but how that is linked to being unwell in your childhood, dealing with violence every single day, and then maybe wellness, a green juice, is kind of the solution later in life. I thought that was so clever to link these two and make that connection. How did the journey and the pursuit of wellness start for you, and how did you decide to include that in Clove's narrative?
it's so funny. I think that part of the book is the most close to me for sure. And that part of this character, I'm like, yeah, all of that is me. Okay. Like,
Yeah.
and it felt almost nice because I was like, oh, great. Now I have an outlet for all of this weird knowledge that I've gleaned
Yeah.
over the years, trying to like, solve whatever issue I was having. It's funny because the book takes a really darkly humorous tone toward wellness, and it's
Yeah.
because she both believes in it and also sees the folly of hoping for like a surface level fix to this deeper emotional pain. And in the end, I do see it two ways where it's like wellness as in itself, the pursuit of such through supplements and creams and whatever, or like the latest moon juice
Yeah.
concoction, they're all these really attractive solutions that are being kind of shoved down our throats, especially as women, as like ways to improve. And yet there's an element of like self care and remothering the self that comes in that I think is really beautiful. I think it's
Mhm.
really beautiful to care for oneself. It's an act of defiance to the past for her. This idea of like not just being okay, but being optimized. Like, what a
Yes.
privilege to be able to do that. And she really understands that because it's not a privilege she had with her mother growing up.
Hmm.
There's a lot of class differences there. Her and her mother were in poverty. Like, they were at the Goodwill trying on stuff that they couldn't even buy. Like
Yeah.
they were using dollar store shampoo. Sort of flipped from that in her adulthood is part of that. It's like a rejection of the past too. It's like, no, I think there's a moment where she really acknowledges like her mother's attempts at beauty and wellness
Yeah.
versus this like $38 skin cream for her newborn for 2 ounces. It's like, it is this
Yeah.
way of separation, I think, from that world for
Hmm.
her. And also, it also gets her into like some trouble because she's in an extraordinary amount of debt and can't really keep up with it, right? Because it's super expensive. And I think the book, this is a book that doesn't settle on any easy answers. So we're just seeing a woman trying to cope. I think also in early motherhood, I felt, and maybe you relate, like anything that we can grasp onto that kind of can help define that identity as
Hmm.
a person in the world. I felt I needed to have those little things, those
Yeah.
little reminders of like, this is just for me, or like I'm still a person. So often as a
Mhm.
early on in motherhood, less now, but I felt sort of like, am I even a person anymore? Like
Yes.
so much of my identity just felt sort of gone to me a little bit. And I was always like, no, I'm a writer. I am a person that also deserves care. Like it felt like I had to really, really fight for those things in those early days. Also, the satisfaction and distraction of shopping. I wanted to show that. It's like she can really push down some of these uncomfortable feelings if she can just focus on finding like the world's perfect trench coat, like these
Exactly.
sort of, they're silly. They are silly, and we know that they're not going to be the solution, but I'm sure every reader can relate to hoping that new supplement is going to really absolve them of something. So
Yeah.
I loved that part of the book. I love her obsession with grocery stores, not just any grocery store, like we're talking like, organic wellness co-ops.
Yes.
It's a point of levity for the book too. It's like
Yeah.
this book is different than my other books in the sense that this is really a character in the modern world. She's one of us. She's out at the grocery store shopping for dinner stuff. She's not in sort of an altered world. So I liked those elements of the book a lot. I thought they brought some balance to what we see of her past too.
No, 100% adds some levity. And there's one perfect line, actually. I think it's you're mentioning the organic grocery stores where she says grocery is the opposite of violence. Perfectly sums that up as well. And the pursuit of all of that. And I do really relate to this feeling of being untethered, your fragmented identity, I feel like I'm trying to hold on to who I was as a writer, and self-care is one of those just little luxuries where we're taking care of this newborn baby, but we need something to take care of ourselves. And like you said, it just feels, we know it's not the solution, but it's just something we can sink our teeth into. So I really love that inclusion in the book, and I love the juxtaposition of wellness culture, the pursuit of it looking back at this past life that is unwell, quote unquote. Do you think that there are any similarities, and this is why potentially you were drawn to being an author because writing is similar to wellness. It's this idea of taking control of your own narrative, of your own mind, your own autonomy. Instead of taking supplements, vitamins, all of that, sitting down to write is a calming act of catharsis as well. I see the similarities there. Do you think that is also relevant and rings true for you?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that for so long I've thought of writing as my truest, like my truest friend, like my
Yeah.
truest confidant, the thing that never lets me down. And it's always there for me, like truly. And I think the pursuit of writing, it probably is born out of this idea of taking back a narrative, of trying to figure out, like, making meaning of pain. I think that was an early pursuit for me, was like, I have all this pain inside and
Mhm.
I need to make it beautiful or I'm going to lose my mind. Like,
Right, which is
like it's
similar to
truly an act of,
wellness.
yeah, yeah. It's an act of survival. It's an act of defiance, of retaliation. I think as a child, I was really concerned with this idea of justice because all around me, I was not seeing these men get in trouble. Like, to put it so simply, as a kid, you're like, how are they able to do all this stuff and not get in trouble? It's just
Right.
crazy to me. I couldn't let it go. And I think that was like part of also writing about the things I write about, was like, not that I'm getting them into trouble now. It's just
Yeah.
that I'm calling it out. I'm just showing it in the
Yeah.
way that I perceived it, in the way that I believe is true. And I have cultivated like a deep sense of self-worth where I believe that my version of the truth has earned the space that it's going to take up. And it's just as worthy as other people's version of the truth. It's interesting too. I think about writing in terms of also this, I'm so obsessed with the subconscious mind. I
Yeah.
love psychology. I'm very interested in how our brains work. And I can look back at my early work, very early work, the first short stories I ever wrote, or even a lot of the stories in Heartbroke. And I really see the way I was trying to work things out
Yeah.
in my own brain. Because a lot of those stories are so wild. I'm like, where did these come from? And as I wrote them, I truly could not have told you. I mean, you become a writer and then suddenly you have to be able to talk about your writing in an eloquent way. But
Yeah.
prior to having to talk about it in an eloquent way, I could never have explained where these characters, like, I
Yeah.
mean, maybe I knew a seed, but I look back and I'm like, oh, I was really trying to work something out. And it's pretty obvious to me now what those things are. But at the time, I was just pulling from that
Yeah.
subconscious in such a way that I'm sure it was an act of healing. And I don't mean to like make writing sound like saccharine in any way, like, oh, writing is so healing, but there are elements to it that are healing and
Mhm.
are redemptive for me, and that's probably why I keep doing it, and it's so much fun also.
Yeah, it's something you can't explain. It's a calling, but it's nice that that's been your constant throughout everything. You can always return to it.
Yes.
How did you protect your mental health while writing about such heavy themes that are partially inspired by your own childhood? Were there any rituals or things that you did to really kind of protect yourself in the writing or to get you out of that heavy mindset after a particularly daunting writing session?
Well, I'm a big believer in moving emotions through the body. So as I'm writing, I know that I am moving stuff, but I know that there needs to be some extra somatic care after something like that. Like,
Mhm.
writing this book, like the first push of the draft, when it was all becoming a surprise to me, I cried a lot in the writing of it. I would just be
Really?
crying and writing, and actually that was always a positive indication to me that I was getting at something very true. Like, after that, it's like, yes, taking a nice long walk by myself, truly every day, considering the body. I think early in my writing and certainly through my 20s, I did not consider the body very much. I
Yeah.
was just slumped over in my bed with my laptop, like totally building all this stagnancy in my
Yeah.
body, and had a
I
lot of
can
like
relate.
back problems and neck
Neck
and
problems. Yeah.
headaches. And why do I feel it like so terrible? Well, I wasn't really prioritizing that next step, which was like, yeah, I'm stirring up all these emotions and then I need to move them out. I need
Mhm.
to do some breathing. I need to take a walk. It's the simple things, actually. It's in all of my wellness journey, which I've tried a lot of stuff. I mean, if you name it, I've probably tried it. And I always come back to the simplest of things that are always free, like
Yeah.
the long walk, getting off of technology, drinking a ton of water, doing really intentional deep breathing and shaking, moving around, dancing. Like those simple things are actually always where it's at usually. So it's good to know that on this end because, yeah, probably for so long I thought I just hadn't found the right supplement yet or something. But
There's something nice about it, going back to the simple things, back to basics. Usually that's where everything in life takes us. Just being in nature, calming, long
yeah,
walk, that's good. Is it
yeah.
bringing up or stirring up heavy emotions and talking about it now that the book is out? It's one thing to write it and be alone in your room, putting the pen to paper, but now that you're on tour and doing podcasts, is it not that you're getting tired of rehashing it, but you don't want to revisit this all the time? You've said what you said in the book.
Interesting. Yeah, I wonder, I guess for me, there's sometimes this feeling of I'll play catch up later almost. Like I'll have all of these, I'll be talking about it, doing interviews, like doing events, trying to explain it like in a
Yeah.
way that feels digestible for an audience. And then it's almost like later, I'll be like, wow, that was actually kind of intense. But in the moment, I'm just in this other place of like more autopilot. Sometimes I can downplay the intensity of what I'm doing,
Mhm.
actually. And it's only like later, I'm like, God, I'm very drained. I'm very exhausted. Why? Why ever would that be?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, Chelsea, like you just have talked about these really intense things for a long time. Maybe that's why. It's almost like I play catch up in that way. But I think that for me, it's like a lot of this stuff is stuff I've talked about for so long that it's not like I'm bringing out new stuff in the moment that's not
Yeah.
processed. It's usually I'm sticking to a script that is things that I've thought about ahead of time that I'm comfortable sharing, usually. And
Right.
that's something I just learned along the way with interviews with like, I need to get ahead of what my limits are. The thing is like, I do share personal stuff. I do share intimately. I want to connect with an audience on a deep level. And I believe that's part of my purpose.
Hmm.
But also at the same time, I am being intentional about like I'm not sharing everything, like
Yes.
I'm not, I could say so much more. Like I've actually been very kind to my family. Like if you
Really.
only knew, like you're really only seeing just this little bit. The
It's
reason I
nice.
read is to have these deep, like emotional moving experiences. And I
Mhm.
think that anyone who likes my books is probably similar in that way. And so I think there's just, we can jump in really deep right away because we're already like intense and on that level.
Yeah,
And I love
exactly.
that. So,
No, it's true. But it's a very good point what you make of I always find the authors that you hear who everyone goes, "Oh, you share so much. That must be a lot." But it's really, I find those are the authors or writers that actually have the most still hidden, the most privacy. They have a very good boundary between what they choose to share and talk about and what they keep private. Okay, I have to lighten the mood a little. I want to ask about this article you wrote in People about short kings and hot rodent men, how they're having a moment. So good. Jeremy Allen White was the photo, and I think he's like 5'6". I want to ask about the connection to Madwoman and your own life of realizing you married a partner who's the same height as you. But also, Clove, she chooses her husband who is around her height. They meet in a college drama class, and you write that it's because he doesn't glower above her. Did you have that aha moment in writing that line or about Clove choosing a short king with your own experience of like, oh, this is also a moment in my subconscious where I'm kind of protecting myself. It's the antithesis of my father. Was that in the writing or did you make that link afterwards?
I think I made that link in the writing because I always knew about myself that my type, like I just always seemed to gravitate towards shorter men. And I
Love
just
it.
thought, oh, and what a quirk. It's just a little quirk that I have. And in writing Madwoman, so this character is very, very intentional about finding a safe, what she calls a safe
Yeah.
partner. Her whole world is shaped by the violence she experienced. And I really wanted the reader to understand those elements. Like that's also a way that violence affects women. It's like I'm
Yeah.
always making choices in my daily life to avoid violence. And I'm not naive to the fact that violence is everywhere. And so, as a woman, I am always holding my keys a certain way. I'm
Yeah.
moving through the world with this consciousness that many men, I won't say all men, of course, many
Mhm.
men don't. I mean, one a conversation I had with my husband, like early in our relationship, was just we were like in a grocery store late at night. And I mentioned, like, oh, well, if I was alone, I'd have to like hold my keys like a dagger on the way out
Yeah.
of here. And he was
No,
just like, what?
exactly.
And I was like, yeah, man, like that's how I move through the world. You're just thinking of avocados, and I'm thinking about how to survive this parking lot. Like it is a different view. And men need to understand that. I just feel like if everyone was on the same page in that way, we would be in a different place. But I digress. What are the elements of a safe man? Like, how do you predict someone's violence? And of course, height. And the People article articulates this because, God, I didn't want people jumping down my throat to be like, you're saying that only tall men are abusive? I'm like, no,
No.
I'm saying all men are abusive.
Yeah,
you,
exactly.
you could be short, you could be tall, whatever, no discrimination.
Yeah.
But like in her subconscious, she is associating like that feeling of being like looked down upon or like glowered over
Hmm.
as as dangerous as violent. She wants to be seen eye to eye with someone. And so I was like, that's interesting. Maybe that's why I've always kind of gone toward these men that are a little smaller in stature, because on some primal subconscious level, I'm trying to evade violence and I see a big giant dude twice my size and I'm scared. Is this crazy to imagine that these two things could be related? No. So I wrote this kind of funny article about that, but I was very interested in that. Like, how does type play into like based on, what we've experienced or the
Yeah.
past? And yeah, my husband is a short king. And that phrase is so annoying and weird, but
It's
he is
catchy.
he is short. He's short. Like I never have been attracted to like tall dudes. And maybe it's because I just want to be able to like take him in a fight or something if I had to.
And you could. No, but I loved that connection of kind of these repressed childhood survival mechanisms. And it's like for preventing future power imbalances,
Hmm.
essentially. Like you said, you're not saying all all tall men are violent, but
No.
yeah, no, I thought that was very clever. And that's what this whole book is. You have this juxtaposition of a very dark
Yeah.
theme, domestic violence, but then linking it to wellness culture, which people could see as frivolous and on the surface, but it's really not. It's genius. Anyway, what do you hope? There's so many themes, so many amazing takeaways, but what do you hope is the one thing that readers get when they read Madwoman?
Have a little more understanding about how domestic violence works.
Hmm.
Because I think if we all can be more educated in that way, then only good can come from that, right? It's like we can approach not only the people in our lives in different ways, but we can kind of work to prevent. I think that a lot of the violence against women, so many women who are killed at the hands of their partners, these are to me like preventable deaths. These are things that had warning signs. These are
Hmm.
things that are happening on a long spectrum. And often there's not enough support and resourcing for women in those positions or for anyone in those positions. I think there's an assumption of like that resources are available if needed. And actually, often that's not the case. And usually, if someone truly needs them, they're probably at a point where even knowing how to access them would be really difficult. And so
Hmm.
it's this thing that I think people don't necessarily want to look at. And I get it. It is difficult to look at, it's difficult to talk about. But at the same time, almost everyone I talk to is like, oh, I've experienced that, or oh, my mom experienced that, or my grandma experienced that, or oh, I
Yeah.
used to know someone who was in that. it's just statistically so common that I refuse to believe that this is like a niche interest. It's
Yeah.
like, no. And also, it affects us all because even if you don't know someone directly impacted by domestic violence, we know statistically that like almost all mass shooters have had a history of domestic violence leading up to this bigger sort of display.
Yeah.
So it matters. And I'm not a fiction writer who is like, you know what I'm going to do next? I'm going to write this book about domestic violence. No, I start with character. I start with voice. I'm interested in story. I want to write a really high art version of whatever it is. And then it's almost like later, I'm like, oh, look, this book is exploring this theme. And
Hmm.
so I guess I can say that I hope it could provide more understanding
Yeah.
for people. I hope that it could be connective. I hope that it could create conversation. And also so many people have written to me and been like, wow, you really nailed the way it feels to move through the world with that monkey on your back. That sort of like
Yeah.
it was funny because I saw this reel on Instagram where it was like, this is what it feels like to carry trauma. And it was almost a comical video of this woman moving through her life with this person in a like a shadow person, like in a totally like black, full face costume all the way head to toe. But
Like Kim
this
Kardashian
like
at the Met.
shadow, yeah, exactly. Like, and they were like draped over her and she's dragging them around her
Yes.
daily life. And I was like, yes, that is like this almost like comical idea about what it does feel like to carry these images, to carry this past. I hope that it's connected in that way. I hope it's cathartic to read. I hope it's one of those books that people share with a friend and like underline passages and feel seen. I feel like the book will never be for everyone, but the people that it is for, I hope they find it and I wrote it for them. So I wrote it for us, for the
Yeah.
people that get it.
And that's the best thing. It's like not everyone, I think everyone will get it, but reading is so subjective, but it finds its audience. It finds the people it's meant to find. So I have on my bulletin board beside me this holy shit list of those holy shit moments as an author where you go, holy shit, I can't believe this is happening. Like you see somebody reading your book on the subway, or you hold your finished first book in your hand, or you become a New York Times bestseller, you get a film and TV deal, whatever it may be, and you kind of just check it off. What so far has been your biggest holy shit moment or moments? And what is there, if any, do you still hope to check off on that pseudo list?
Yeah. I think that for this book, I was really excited that it was a book of the month pick.
Love that.
I just, I love that subscription box I have for years. I love getting my blue box in the mail. I have subscribed for so long, like long before I ever published a book. So I think I always held in my head,
Mm.
like, oh, if I could get in that box, that would be really cool. And so the book was a pick and it was really cool. And I got to go to their offices, which are so beautiful. And I recorded a podcast there live and they just really know how to make a writer feel special. I would just say that. I think there's
Oh,
so much about the writing world and writing that's very unglamorous and diminishing even and
yes.
punishing.
Yeah.
And then you have these moments where you're like, oh, this feels really celebratory and very special and intentional. And
Yeah.
I just loved that experience with them. It was such a good experience, and they have such a huge audience that I do feel like I was able to connect with readers that I wouldn't have otherwise. So
Mhm.
I was so thrilled just on multiple levels that that happened for me. And I feel very lucky that it did. So that was kind of an oh shit feeling of like, yay. And, those little things that I think we mark, everyone has different ones. It's like, what does it mean to be successful as a writer? And that
Yeah.
target's always moving.
Yes.
But, or you've ever had a book out or something, you start to like those little things. You're like, if I can get that, and that was always one of my ones. I don't know that it's everybody's, but it's like for
The
me, that
dangling
felt really
carrot.
special. Yeah, I was like, oh, and it's so hard because, right, we have so little control. Like,
Yes.
who
Yeah.
knows why certain decisions are made, and I do think like just it's also subjective. So just grateful that someone there. understood and loved the book enough to like pick it and vouch for it. And so that means a lot. I think also a book like this, our society really likes a certain version of domestic violence. And I won't, we know a very popular book that
Yes.
it's everywhere, and that's
Yes.
fine. But also I am really proud that like a story like mine that's really complex and not searching for easy answers and not romanticizing things is able to find an audience through like a bigger mainstream thing like Book of the Month. So that's always a win.
Yes. Very well
Yeah,
said. That's
I'd
very
say
good.
that one.
Anything you still hope to accomplish in your author career?
Challenging myself as an artist, just remembering that it's about the art at the end of the day for
Yeah.
me. It's about style, it's about elevating my own abilities. I want to get better and better. I want to try new things in my work, and I really want Madwoman to be a movie or limited series. So just put that into the universe.
Oh my God. Well, I'll manifest it right now, but of any
Thank you.
book
Light a
that I've
candle.
read, it has to be. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, and part of my writing process is very visual. Like I do a lot of visualizing scenes. I literally see things as a movie in my mind as I'm writing. So maybe all writers feel that way. I don't know. But I feel like atmospherically, visually, I think this would actually make a great transition to film. So
Yes.
I just hope it gets the chance.
Yeah.
That would be like a huge dream come true. It's so many things have to align for that to work out, but you have to keep the belief alive that it can happen. So
Yes. And I mean, I'm going to say it now. It's definitely going to happen. I'll help put it out into the universe,
yay.
but there's no chance it
Thank
wouldn't.
you.
You mentioned you want to try new things as an artist, as a writer. This book is first person with a direct voice, which I loved. I thought that was a clever structural choice. Do you ever find choosing tense or voice hard? Like, do you always know, okay, this is going to be first person? Do you foresee
Mm.
writing in the same voice, or do you want to try different voices and tenses?
I am generally drawn to that first person. I think just because I love urgency, I love to feel
Mhm.
like I cannot look away. Like, I think there's a
Yes.
lot of propulsion built into a first person narrator. But right now, I am experimenting with more of a I also love a super close third because
Mhm.
there's something magical about the little bit of distance that you can get with a close third where I still feel like I'm accessing that intimacy of the first person, but I
Yeah.
do have a little more to play with. And so right now I'm writing, and my new novel is three different perspectives, three different women, and it's a very close third present tense, which is kind of like got this really interesting energy to it that feels very perfect for like a thriller in a way. Like
Yes.
there's a little edge to it. There's a little creepiness to like a close third present tense, which I'm really loving. So
Oh, okay, I love that. Okay,
yeah,
well, I'll do a quick little rapid fire. Hopefully, these are somewhat fun.
this is
But
all so much fun. I love talking to you.
I love talking to you too. I literally could go on forever, and I'm like, gotta get these questions in, but I just want to have
Mhm.
like coffee with you. Yeah, I'm not just saying this, but I'm a huge fan of your Substack. Immediately signed up right away, make up your life. I have to ask your favorite beauty products or your go-tos.
That Substack was born out of just, I think, wanting an outlet to talk about highbrow versus and lowbrow together. Like, not
Yes.
that makeup or self-care is lowbrow, but like, can we talk about mascara at the same time we talk about grief? Yes, I believe so. They're all entwined, like,
I couldn't agree
and
more.
yeah, like the I think makeup and that level of care is also connected to the idea of reparenting oneself that I find interesting, and the decisions we make around products and all of that is interesting. It's definitely a substack that is about the artistic practice, but I think I also entwine some of those new things I'm finding, or it adds that levity. I don't know. I like it. My favorite products, I feel like I'm sort of a junkie in the sense of like they're always changing. I'm always like in the pursuit of like the one.
Yes.
And I talk about that on the Substack too, because I think it's probably like a dangling carrot that doesn't exist.
That's half the fun though. It's
Like
like the journey, not the destination.
yes, yes, it's the journey. It's the journey. So let's see. Okay, well, I will say this. I started getting hydrofacials which is brand new for me. I've never gotten facials. I have not wanted to spend money on that at all. I'd much rather like buy another sweater
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like
That you'll see immediately.
buy a facial. Yes, I would definitely recommend it. I'm generally wary of a lot of stuff like that. Like it makes me nervous or I don't want to like disrupt something that didn't need to be disrupted.
Yeah.
But this just sort of refreshes things. It's not super time consuming. So
Is this where you can
that's not
see
a
the gunk?
product.
They show you
Yes.
all the
Yes.
crap that was in your face.
Yes.
Yes. And so it's an
It is
immediate
so
reward too.
satisfying. And then there's like, you sit under this red light 10 or 15
Oh,
minutes and it's relaxing too. And I actually notice some difference from it. So
yeah.
I'm gonna kind of stick to that for now. I like this brand Merit
Oh
lately.
yeah.
I don't know if you know
Yep.
them. Yeah,
Yep.
but I'm always moving around. I think the best product truly is my standard mascara that I always will use. I just think it can't be beat. It's so cheap. It's number seven Stay Perfect mascara, $7.
Yeah.
And it's a tubing mascara. So you have to be into tubing mascaras, but I don't know why anyone wouldn't be because they will never smudge. I've tried other tubing mascaras that are ultimately disappointing, but this one, A plus.
I need a new
So
mascara, so I'm gonna go buy that one.
other mascaras will end up all over my face. Like why? I don't know if it's the construction of my eyeballs, like something about my bottom lashes is just resting directly on my skin.
Yeah.
So whatever it is going to be a big dark raccoon eye by
Yeah.
the end of an hour. Like so I just can't even wear traditional mascaras at all. And this is the only one. This is the one. And I
Okay.
hope they never discontinue it.
They no, they can't now. We'll send them
They
this clip.
cannot.
Yeah. Also, I have to ask you your number one tip for taking the perfect author photo. You are the queen of the best cover jacket photos.
It's an element of being an author that can actually be really fun. So I'm very into the elements that are really fun
Mhm.
because right, like writing the book, you're alone, it can be intense. What is fun about it is all of these external little things you get to do like, when you first see your cover art, it's so fun
Oh,
and I think with Godshot the cover, that was what really like threw me into wanting to it's like for this bright gold cover. Sadly,
yeah.
I didn't get to do in-person events, but before I knew that, I started amassing this like gold tour wardrobe because I'm like, come on, I can't have this gold book and not also show up super gold. It's glittery, it's fun, and it is this element of fun in the process. And I'm all about that. So the author photo, I feel, is also a statement for yourself. It's
Mhm.
like I take myself seriously as an artist. This is a photo I feel great about. I think my number one tip is like figuring out what is going to make you feel amazing in your photo. And that could look different for everyone. I did take into consideration my jacket art for not Godshot because I didn't have that cover yet when I took that picture, but the other two and definitely Madwoman. So my jacket photo for Madwoman UK is a different photo
Oh, I
taken at
didn't
a
know that.
different time in a different outfit. Yeah, because the moodiness of the US cover, the blue
Oh,
and the darker palette really looked great with the photos I did for that. But then when I saw this like bright hot pink and yellow cover for the UK, I was like, that's a very different mood. And I personally cannot abide using the same photo for that book.
yes.
So I have this amazing photographer here in Portland named Jessica Keaveney. And I just called Jessica and I was like, can we take some really quick photos? I have a vision. I have the book cover. I know what I want it to look like. And we busted it out in like less than an hour. And it's worth it to me. I don't know. It's like, it's something
Yes.
you have to live with forever. And I think that some people won't care very much about it. And then some do. But I think for all of us, it is this way that we're going to connect with a reader. It's
Yeah.
the way you're representing yourself as a writer. And I talk a lot with my writing clients and students about that. It's like part of building that self trust as an artist and that sense of yourself in the
Mhm.
world in that way is really taking charge about how you're going to be perceived and like having
Yeah,
don't wait to have a book to have a great photo that you love
I
because
agree.
what happens is like suddenly you win an award, suddenly you
Mm-hmm.
sell a book, or a magazine wants your picture and you don't have anything, and then you have to kind of snap to it after the fact. But if you just kind of already have something that you feel great about, it's really wonderful. And it's like this investment in yourself. You're like, I know I will end up using this, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna take one. And you don't have to hire a person. I have taken some great author photos with an iPhone with a friend. You can do it all different ways, but just having that conversation with yourself, how do I feel best, or how do I want to represent myself,
Yeah.
is kind of interesting too. It's all like a prompt for self exploration.
Yeah, it's fun. It's one of the chances you get to play, but I really like what you said. It's about kind of taking yourself seriously as an author, saying, okay, this is who I am. Take those photos, like feel proud of who you are.
We live in a visual age, whether we
Yes.
want to deal with that or not. And it is like having that continuity on just a very practical level of being recognizable online, or like,
Hmm.
this is the picture that's on the book, that's on the website, that's on the Instagram, and someone can find me if they want. And like,
Yeah.
making sure I also, this is, it's kind of separate but also related, like using a username on these platforms that's recognizable. If you
Hmm.
want to connect and build writing community, I think it's harder if your username is like Kittyland 2587,
Yeah.
like, and then it's
Yeah.
something else over here, and then your email is something else over here. I
Yes.
remember Roxanne, I think it was Roxanne Gay. Forgive me if it's not, but I feel like she once said, and it stuck with me years ago, she was like, make yourself easy to contact. If an
Hmm.
editor at a magazine wants to reach out to you, don't make them swim through muck and
Yes.
mire to find your email address, because people are not going to take that extra time. If you can't be found quickly and easily, it is a problem, I think, in our attention economy. So
Yeah, I agree.
make it easy.
And make it easy for people to find your book. I actually read somewhere that it takes people 7 times of seeing something for them to actually
Mm-hmm.
buy your book or click on that link.
Yep.
So, yeah, having that continuity is really important. I'm curious about your cover art. Gorgeous covers, and I love that you have one word titles as well. Is that something that you get to be involved in, or how did all of the gorgeous cover art come to be?
I have been so lucky. So the first two books were designed by Nicole Caputo at Catapult, who is just a masterful
Mhm.
designer. And I was so thrilled that she was going to do mine. And those were the covers they showed me for those.
No
Like, there
way.
were not really other options. That they were
Okay.
like, here is your cover. We hope you love it. We love it. And
Yeah.
luckily, I loved it. And I love the way they look together. They're kind of like six sister books. They're like holding hands. I just got lucky in that sense where I felt that they understood the book. And I will say that the common thing for all of the covers is that the designer read the book to completion. They really read it. It's
That's
not always
rare.
possible. Yes, it is rare, shockingly. And I think with Little Brown and Madwoman, Greg Kulik did this cover, and he had read the book and he zeroed in on a moment in the book that, to me, is
Mhm.
like really at the heart of the book and was one of the hardest scenes to write. And when I saw it, I knew that that's where it came from. And I just was like, it's perfect. Like, that's it. There wasn't a lot of back and forth. Ultimately, that cover did change. The image stayed the same, but just some of the composition changed. And I think, like, while I love the original concept, it looks almost like a movie poster. It's very weird. It's
Mhm.
very unsettling. As an art piece, I'm obsessed with it. But when we realized like it might be better to make it a little bit brighter, a little more accessible to a reader
Yeah.
and a purchaser in a bookstore, I love what it ended up being even more. But I just was lucky in the sense that I think each designer really did understand the book, and they were pulling from that place of understanding. And so the
Yeah.
concept ended up being really brilliant every time.
That is so cool. And it's cool because before the book was even out in the world, the designer, especially for Madwoman, zeroed in on that scene. And you hadn't had reader
Mm-hmm.
response yet. And it's just neat that that's what I really think is the most pivotal, hardest scene to write. And that's what you put on the cover. It's always
Yeah.
fascinating to me. I think that's cool. Very
Yes, and the
exciting.
woman is a real woman, and I'm in contact with her actually.
Go.
She's this incredible photographer, and that was a self-portrait she took. I
Oh,
believe she lives in the UK, but I'm sure for her it's very strange to see her. image on a book cover in this way. I don't know. The last I checked, it seemed like she thought it was cool, but how odd, like how odd that this photo you took ends up in this way. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
And then the UK cover is using art from a Dutch woman painter and she's really impressive. And it's just, I love like the covers having those contexts too is
Yeah.
really special. So
And how the UK interprets it versus the North American audience.
yeah.
Interesting. What book is on your bedside table or top of your TBR pile?
I hate mentioning a book that's not readily available for a reader, but so I'll do two.
Do a
Um,
galley brag. We want it.
I will do, yes, I will. It's not even a galley yet, actually. It's a book by Ali Rowbottom that it's her next novel.
I
So
love
she
her.
wrote Jello Girls. Yes, she wrote Aesthetica, and she has a new novel coming out, I believe, in 2025 that will be announced soon. It is called Lovers. I'm on read four right now. I'm like reading it a fourth time. We're at a writing group together, but this novel is stunning. Like it feels like something that was just handed down. The writing is so impressive. The story is so impressive. The structure is so interesting, but it's all about female friendship. It's about the 1980s
Oh, great
Los
time period.
Angeles, kind of around the time of like the video vixen era. I've never read anything like it, and yet it's very classical feeling where you're like, this is harkening back to the way I felt when I read Fates and Furies, when I read White Oleander. Like it has this really classical feeling and it's exploring this incredibly specific moment in history that is so compelling. And she's just so damn good. So I want to just prep all the listeners for Lovers by Ali Rowbottom, which is going to blow your mind. And then I just finished the sequel by Jean Hump Corliss. Jean, we're sorry if we mispronounced your name.
Yes,
I
we
find
love
you
your books though.
so impressive. Love the books. She is prolific. I right now I'm very interested in women writers who are on like book six, like book seven. Like give me
Yeah.
I like mid-career. I want late career. Like I want to know what it's like to write that many books. That is very impressive. There's such an emphasis on the debut as
Yeah.
being this ultimate act of art. And I'm like, no, no, the debut is just your beginning. Like, I want
Mhm.
to know what you do after that. And I'm
Agree.
very compelled by that. So, this writer, the plot and the sequel, I found to be so entertaining, so funny. It really skewers the writing world. Like, if you want to read a book, both books I think should be read together. It's hilarious. It's like she's writing about the writing world in a way that I think anyone
Yeah.
could read and find really fascinating, but especially for us writers, it's like so satisfying and so funny. And it's a thriller and it's about like revenge. And I thought it was interesting the way they work together. I mean, it's not necessarily my typical read. I mean, I think I like love a slim Elena Ferrante like female rage book, but this
Yeah.
these books are about female rage too.
Yeah.
And I think they're expertly done and how they work together. And I'm interested in her. So I just finished the sequel and honestly it was like the exact book I needed to kind of pull me out of the haze I felt in tour where I really couldn't read at all and
Yeah.
I thought my brain was broken and I could only watch that like Mormon housewife show and I was like if I don't read something soon I think I've lost it. I and finally I just was able to like settle into the sequel and it was very fun to read. So I guess I'll mention those. But
Those are
there's so
great.
many. There's so many good ones.
I
I
know.
also want everyone to read Daughter by Claudia Day. It's
Oh, I
one
love
of my
that book
favorites
too.
that's come out.
She's another
Yeah,
Toronto author.
yes. She's so intelligent and really has her hand on this like deep emotional pulsing tremor of life.
Okay, so well, favorite authors, you kind of talked about them, or ones you return to often.
I mean, I love the book Animal by Lisa Taddeo. I
Mm,
think that that's a book I've read multiple times. It feels like a book that gave me a lot of permission in writing about female anger and female rage. Man, that's a home run book for me. I think it's doing everything I love. Felt like a divisive book in some way, it's always like a litmus test for me. I'm like, if you didn't love Animal by Lisa Taddeo, then
we
we
won't
are
be
really
friends.
not on the same page.
Yeah.
Like,
I-
if you did not like that book, then I don't even know what to say.
Thank God
But
I
I
loved that book.
felt thank God. Thank God. Yeah. I did this interesting podcast a couple years ago where you like came on with a favorite book and then the podcast host you have a conversation about that book, but you don't know if the podcast host is going to like it or not. And they didn't like my pick, which was animal. And but I think our conversation was even more interesting because of that contrast. I just think it's an A plus for so many reasons. I love it. For so long, I would do like a yearly read of White Oleander by Janet Fitch. That feels like a soul book to
That's good.
me. It's a book that really portrays mother loss in a way that I immediately relate to. I think that it's
Yeah.
probably the book that made me want to be a writer.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Yeah, I read it in high school and it was just life changing. It was like, oh, I was always a reader, but I had yet to read a book that really encapsulated the emotional way that I felt
Yeah.
about my mom.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, here it is. I guess that's the thing you can write about. I didn't know. So no, I love books by women that are really risky and really voice. There has to be a voice that is just super compelling, and there has to be a depth to the work.
Yeah.
So I loved the book How to Love Your Daughter by Gila Bloom.
Oh, I love that one too.
Incredible. Yeah,
I haven't
like
heard anyone
talk about
mention
like
that one.
yeah, it's so suspenseful in this very unexpected way. And
Yeah.
the way it explores mother-daughter connection from this angle that I hadn't read before.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm just so impressed by women. I
Yeah.
just want to read like these really intense books by women all the time.
No, I agree. And I like that you're reading like their sixth book because
Yes.
I mean they've mastered their craft by then. They know what works, what doesn't. So I think that's actually very smart.
Yeah, I think we just, as a society, we don't really give enough due to older people. Like, there's so much
Mhm.
emphasis on youth being better,
We
or obviously
glamorize
everything.
debuts 100%.
Yes, yes. And advertising is so geared toward the young. And it's weird to me if like a marker of success for a writer is that they wrote a book young. I
I
got this
agree.
like letter about a book that was like, you're not going to believe this. This was written by a 23-year-old. Yay. And I was like, I don't think that's like a real vote of confidence to me.
No,
I'm like, okay, like
it's not a
you could write a
selling
brilliant
point.
book at 23, but why is it a selling point? It was definitely like the part of the marketing was the youth of this writer. And I worry that that is not really something we should be focused on. I mean, yes, like congratulations, you wrote a book at 23. I too wrote a book at 23 and I'm goddamn so happy it's not published because that
Yes.
would be a nightmare. I'm not saying that youth
No, we know.
makes you not able to write a great book, but I just don't having it be like this marketing tool is strange to me. I'll
I
just say
couldn't
that.
agree more. Even like the third Forbes 30 under 30, that whole thing. I'm like, what about
No,
like
I
50
know.
under 50? I feel like you really hit your stride and you have more life experience to
Yes,
pull on when you're writing the older you get.
absolutely. I think it's why in the marketing materials isn't it like this is a hot shot book by a 55-year-old woman? Like we don't
That's
ever say
next.
that.
I want that.
I want to know, yeah, is this a woman that's experienced menopause? Is this like does she have that a vantage point? That's a vantage point I value. Like I don't know, like I think we are shifting but there is still an emphasis on youth. And I was always a little bit like annoyed with the five under 35. And I remember turning 35 and being like, man, they only have one more year. And then turning 36 and being like, I guess I was just never good enough for that. And like,
Yeah.
and then realizing like, oh, like that literally doesn't matter. That's stupid.
But it shows what society is putting emphasis on, which is frustrating.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think it's weird. And then it makes writers feel like they failed in some way if they get to 40 and they don't have a book yet. And it's like, no, no.
Yeah.
Like, as my grandmother once famously said, like, real life doesn't begin until 40.
Oh,
So
I like that.
keep going. I'm very interested to see in what a writer publishes when their debut is when they're 50 or something. Like,
Me
there's
too.
no right time. There's no measure of success, I feel, that has to do with your age.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. Okay, so favorite place to write.
I like to write now. I have a little designated space that is my desk and
Yeah.
it's upstairs and it feels relatively private. But prior to that, I didn't really ever have, like, it was just the kitchen table. And so I have never really been super precious about the environment, but I'm probably more precious about the environment now than ever before, just because, I have more boundaries now than I had before because my kids are school age. So there is this time of day that nobody is around me at
Mhm.
home. And when they were super little, I just didn't have that. So now I'm becoming more like, I need my certain little things or something. I don't like working in a coffee shop anymore. I very often had to go out to a coffee shop because we
Right.
were in like 2 bedroom tiny spaces with all these people, and like I had to leave. But given the choice, actually now, especially, I'd really like to be in my own space, noise canceling headphones with some sort of wordless music.
Classical?
Well, the book I'm writing now, I don't think I've shared this before, but I'll tell you, is I have been listening to the Succession soundtrack. I
Oh my
just
God.
love it. It's
I
so
love, I
good.
feel like that's the
It's so
perfect little
good.
teaser. We get an exclusive there.
Yeah, something about the energy of that music, and then whatever like thing plays after it, because it just starts feeding similar music.
Yeah.
Love all of that too. Curious what happens if I keep playing the same music every time I write this book. Like, will it be infused in somehow? So that's been a little bit of an experiment with this new book, as I've been listening to the same thing over and over while I write it.
Longhand, Scrivener, Word, or Google Doc.
I just have figured out Scrivener for
Yeah.
this new book. And it's like, wow, mind is blown. Where has this been all my life? Turns out all that was needed was a 10-minute instructional video, and I totally got it. I've always felt that it was very confusing, and I did not want to put in the time to like learn it. And
Yeah.
I was like always a Microsoft Word till I die. And then I think something about doing this multi point of views, it has
Yeah.
felt very helpful. So just a plug, like there's some great videos online where you can learn how to use it. I use it very basically. I don't even think I'm using it to its full capacity, but just being able to move through povs and see the chapters is like, wow, structurally it's really helping me, because it is a different beast to write from these three different views, I will
Yes.
say. So any organizational thing helping is worth it.
Exactly. So, favorite writing stationery? Do you have any notebooks, pens, water vessels, candles that you swear by?
I know that you asked this question, so I actually looked at my pen that I like,
Yeah.
and then
I
I
like,
left the pen across the room.
yeah.
Okay, I love the Moleskine notebook, soft cover, big. They're
Oh,
the biggest
soft.
one. No lines, blank page, fully blank. I don't like lines or any dots on the page, but yeah, I love the softness of the cover. I don't like a hard cover. So, but I need big space. I love that size because I can also like sketch out pictures or any sort of like little diagram I'm making for the structure of the book. And then the pen is like kind of a gel. I need it to move across the page easily because I
Yeah.
write really crazy and really fast. I love longhand, but I don't draft longhand usually because I will never read my own handwriting back. Usually, like what I want to say is coming really quickly, and my hand can't physically keep up. I do more just like journaling and stuff.
Pick your poison, your drink. I know you are sober, but what drink do you have while you're celebrating? It doesn't have to be alcoholic. I'm here for the non-alcoholic wave. And then also,
Okay.
what's your drink while writing?
My drink while writing is I love a matcha. I make a very specific matcha in the morning using a very specific milk and
Tell me,
a very
it's so hard to
specific.
make your own matcha.
Okay. Okay. A life-changing instrument that you need if you make your own matchas in the morning is the Breville, like the latte maker. Like, I don't know if you can picture this. I can send you a link.
That froths the milk?
It's, yes, it's a milk frother.
Hmm.
Okay, well, put your milk in and then put your matcha in. And I use the Beekeeper's Natural Wellness Honey, which
Okay.
has royal jelly and propolis. And I swear to God, it's why I never get sick. I just pop it in there and just press the button, and just magic happens. And it's perfectly blended, it's perfectly heated. I can't believe it took me so long to figure this out. But I've had it for like a year. And I make that every morning, so that's sometimes the drink of choice that accompanies me to the desk, herbal tea throughout the day or something, or maybe a smoothie. But if I'm celebrating, then I love a really good kombucha.
Mm.
Like, you're right that I don't drink. So I love my fancy beverages. I love this adaptogenic sparkling water. This is not an ad. It's called Dram. This one is lavender and lemon balm.
But if they
It
want to
is so
sponsor you, you're
good.
open.
Yeah, Dram, if you'd like to send me some free products, I am always manifesting free luxury products. Then you can hit me up. But it's so freaking good. It's so much better than all the other sparkling waters. I hate all of them except this. So
I hope they sell in Canada.
I don't know. You can order it. There are a few places in Portland I can get it, but they have a website you can just order. Maybe they'll ship to Canada. It's so good. Highly
Yeah.
recommend the lavender and lemon balm flavor. And kombucha, I love Lionheart kombucha, which is made locally in Portland as well. So,
Good probiotic.
no, but it changes. It changes. There's seasons coming in and out of the special beverages.
Yeah.
I like to have like three special beverages a day.
You need little rewards in between the writing.
That's right. Yes.
Okay, your favorite, I think I know the answer, but your favorite bookstore.
You know the answer. What do you think it is?
Well, I just assume because you live in Portland that one of them is going to be Powell.
Yes. Well, of course,
Of course.
Powell's is amazing. The people that work there are amazing. I literally like thank them in the acknowledgments of my book because
Yeah.
they're so great and they do so much to hand sell and support their local writers. So shout
That's
out to Powell's. I also love Broadway Books, which is the closest to my house here in Portland.
oh,
Again, just like the most lovely people. I mean, all these indie bookstores are full of the most amazing people. Oh, I should say one of my amazing things was being on the Indie Next list for Madwoman because that's like indie bookstores and booksellers saying that they loved your book. And like, there's no better feeling than that. They're
yeah.
so smart, and I love Books Are Magic in Brooklyn. I just love them. It's
Yeah.
such a delightful place to be. Their booksellers are so wonderful as well. I love the merch of Books Are Magic. I have
Oh,
so
yeah.
much of their merch, the hats, the sweatshirts. Like on any given day, I'm in like a full Books Are Magic outfit. I just love them.
That's your writing uniform.
Yes, the pink hat that just says books.
Yeah.
I get so many compliments on it. People love it. It's from
I
Books Are
love that.
Magic.
I know
So
exactly what hat you're talking about.
one thing that was cool about the tour, right, is like traveling and getting to see these bookstores in person
Yeah.
and how amazing they are. And like there's so many great ones. And in Toronto, I went to
Uh,
Queen and Type,
yes.
and they're so sweet. So everywhere I've gone, I always like to check out the natural grocery store and the indie bookstore. Those are two stops. Prairie Lights in Iowa City was so sweet. I don't know, Skylight, love them. Like Book Passage in San Francisco. All of these places, they all kind of blend into being these like super beautiful, like inclusive spaces that I love so
Yeah.
much. So
It's hard to pick a favorite.
it is.
I love that this is rapid fire, but I just want to keep chatting.
I
What
know.
is
We're never gonna stop.
best writing advice you've received or that you would share with aspiring authors?
So many things rush to mind. I think I really, really, really would say no one can write the story that you can write the way you can write it. If you follow your instinct and you follow what is interesting to you, and I think we get in trouble if we're trying to write toward a marketplace or write toward what we think is going to be popular, you get into sketchy territory because there's no way you can predict that or know that. And even if you did, there's a good chance a reader won't connect with it anyway, because you're not really tapping into what's super true for you and what's authentic for you. Believe in whatever that is and don't deviate from it. I think sometimes I see writers get in this thing where they have like too many cooks in the kitchen.
Mhm.
Maybe there's too many beta readers, or there's like too many people in the writing group, and there's too many voices. Like all of that can be helpful, but it becomes unhelpful if it's crowding out your own intuitive voice.
Yeah.
And trusting that is the most important thing. I look back and I see that the things that people didn't like about my work in workshop when I was in my early 20s, those were not the things that I needed to turn away from. They were just the things I needed to learn how to do better. I'm very happy I had the smallest inkling of that even back then
Mhm.
to resist what people were telling me to do because that would have never been right for me. The real challenge was just rising to the occasion of what I wanted to do and do it better.
Mhm.
So yeah, really trust yourself. Above all, that voice inside, the voice that is asking you to write whatever work it is the voice to listen to at the end of the day. And I think of feedback, no matter who it's from, as nothing but a prompt. It's only a prompt for me to ask deeper questions, to revisit something. It is not necessarily going to be the answer for me, right? Only I know the answer for the work. And feedback is just a prompt to get me there.
That's really good advice.
And knowing that your work just won't be for everyone, and that's great. That's okay. Not only water is for everyone. So
Yeah. If you're writing for everyone, you will reach no one.
yeah, I think so. And I think really realizing that a lot of writing is building or a stamina and a like a tenacity. Often I think I see writers think that they should be able to pump out a book in a year or even two. And some writers can. But
Yeah.
when you're starting out, I think you're building a skill. It would actually be sort of shocking if your first stab at writing a book took you only a year and then it was ready to go. Like, I think you have to be in it for the long game and understand why you're doing it. And
Yeah.
there has to be like a greater reason that you're doing it beyond what I would think of as outcome. Yes, we want an agent. Yes, we want to be published. We want these certain external rewards, but there has to be a deeper reason because those external rewards are so fleeting and they're so unpredictable. So
They're out of your
you have
control.
to really cultivate. Yeah, and they're out of your, yeah, you have to have a deeper reason or you're going to burn out.
Really good advice. This emphasis,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like on age with the marketing, the emphasis on writing quickly, you get really lost of, I'm just trying to get through this draft to the next, but why are you doing it? Why, like, really, what is the reason that you're writing this particular book? And I really love what you said about listening to your own gut, because there will be a lot of chefs in the kitchen. Eventually, it's subjective. Somebody's going to like one thing, somebody's going to not. So you have to kind of go back to your own internal compass at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's so funny. It's like if one rejection throws you off your course and you can't get back on, then I guess you weren't meant to be a writer. Rejection is so a part of it. Like I
Oh
can't
my God.
stress enough how you have to move through rejection
Yeah.
and get to the other side. And I've seen lots of people like kind of not be able to do that. And I don't know what to say. I mean,
You can't be
did
precious
you
about
think
it.
that you can't be precious. I receive rejection all the time to this right now. I mean, I'm gonna probably be rejected by something today, most
Right.
likely. So like I was just rejected yesterday. Like you just see it and you're like, all right, because I truly have over the years you just start to understand that like it might sound a little woo-woo for some people, but it's like what is meant for you will not miss you.
Yep.
And if it
I
misses
believe
you,
it.
it wasn't meant for you. There is a reason. There is a lesson, and trust me, often it can seem incredibly unfair, but that cannot be our preoccupation or you will go crazy. You'll drive
Yeah.
yourself insane and you won't write. So I don't know. It's like that constant decision to come back to that bigger purpose. I want someone beating down the door for me. Like, I don't want to be with someone who's like, maybe. Like, no, I actually don't even want a maybe. I want like a hell, it's a hell yes or it's a no. I really believe that. I just don't have time for any wishy-washiness. I want the full enthusiasm or nothing. I want writers to cultivate that level of belief in the work. If you really believe in it, then you should want nothing but enthusiasm.
I love it. Yeah.
And I can truly confirm, at least for myself, after 3 books, the most fun part is the writing of it. It's the best part. It's the part where you have so much control. You're really in the driver's seat and chasing that high of what it feels like to get in that flow is actually the best part.
I still get that tingling feeling when you have one of those days where the words are flowing. And I'm like, oh my God, I love this. I can't imagine doing anything else. Thank you so much. This is one of my favorite conversations to date. I adore you. And I appreciate you taking the time.
I adore
Seriously.
you.
Well,
This
where can
was
everyone
so
find you
fun.
online and buy your books?
ChelseaBieker.com, Bieker, at Chelsea Bieker on Instagram. I'm not really on Twitter, but I have a profile at Chelsea. It's all the same. It's just at Chelsea Bieker. You will find me.
The continuity.
And you can, the continuity, and you can find my books anywhere books are sold. But please support your local indie bookseller. Bookshop.org is a great resource if you don't have any indies near you and review. please review the books that you care about because it does help, and tell your friends.
Review and pre-order. They are both very important.
Yes. And sometimes people I think are really worried they're gonna like do it wrong or like order from the wrong place. And I just would say there's no wrong place. It's all good in the end. The important thing is that we request it from our libraries, that we just keep supporting books and put our money where we want to see more things grow. So yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you again.
Yeah. Thank
Yay.
you. Have a great